Hello, hi, and a very warm welcome to Grumpcast2. I'm Eric the Half-a-Bee, more commonly known as Tim, and for this sequel, we're joined again by Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike, and I'm less commonly known as Servo Robot on the forums.
And Richard.
Hello, I'm always known as Richard, but I am quite common.
Hello and welcome, Richard. So that's right, to commemorate the recent changes to the Australian Test cricket team, we've decided to cheat as well. And so we've upped our numbers by a factor of 1. So Mike, who's very much the David Warner of this podcast team...
Oi!
which is to say, a talented and game-changing opening bat. Michael, what are we getting up to this time?
Well, Tim, I say we have a look at some of the letters that our listeners have sent in, but mainly we'll have a look at the Enemy of the World Special Edition, which was released last week, but not here.
Oh, well, I'm sure somehow you've managed to get an understanding of what was on the disc, Mike.
By the magic of the internet.
The magic of the internet. Oh, you paid for it on YouTube?
Yes.
Yes, good. Anyway, that sounds good. But first, Richard, why don't you have a rummage in the old mailbag there and pick out one to get us going?
Okay, so here we go. I've got a letter and a parcel.
Ooh.
Okay, so here's the letter. Dear Grumpcasters, please could you get a message out there to Phil Morris asking him to return our fedora to the dressing up box? It's been 10 years. Yours, the Wigan and Lee Indiana Jones Cosplayer Society.
Okay, well, what's the parcel?
Well, there's a PS. While we were tracking down the hat, over the years we found various clues about what Phil Morris has been up to in code form. So please enjoy a game of Parse the Parcel.
In code form. Okay, so let's play some music. And away we go.
Okay, so here's the parcel, Tim.
Oh. It doesn't make a noise if I shake it. There you go, Mike.
Yeah, I'm just waving it next to my ear. I can't hear anything. Here, Tim. You have a go.
Back to Tim.
Thanks. Richard?
Thank you. No, it doesn't smell of anything.
It's a bit papery, but yeah, it's very light too. Okay. Oh, here we go. First clue. So let me quash this now. The Season 3 episodes have not turned up in Sierra Leone. The 10th Planet and Power of the Daleks have not revealed themselves in Singapore. Season 5 has not risen from a TV station in Nigeria. And a whole bunch of odds and sods has not turned up in Australia. That sounds... So I don't think I've ever heard that quote before. Somebody who said that?
You haven't been on Gallifrey base a lot then, have you?
No, I think I've missed out that one.
It gets aired about once every 2 days.
Okay. I guess that's one of Paul Vanezis' quotes. So let me think. Season 3 episodes have not turned up in Sierra Leone, so they've turned up in Ghana, I guess. The 10th Planet and Power of the Daleks has not revealed themselves in Singapore because they've gone on holiday to Nigeria. Season 5 has not risen from a TV station in Nigeria because it's actually still there. And a whole bunch of odds and sods have not turned up in Australia because they're actually in New Zealand. How about that?
Well, that's an interesting thought. I think the interesting thing about this note is that the Season 5 has not risen from a TV station in Nigeria. That's perfectly true. Season 5 has not risen from a TV station in Nigeria.
No, it hasn't. And it never will, because Tomb of the Cybermen will never turn up.
And it never
will.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Yes.
So, but Enemy and Web have. And a whole bunch of odds and sods has not turned up in Australia.
Because some full stories are rumoured to be here.
Absolutely. Now, whether they are a fact that they've turned up, or Paul was actually relying on rumour there, or his investigation into this Mr. Melbourne character is interesting. So the only thing we don't know anything about, and how the unproven in any aspect element, is the Season 3 episodes have not turned up in Sierra Leone. There's two ways you can look at that, I think. One is to say that the Season 3 episodes have turned up elsewhere, or something else has turned up in Sierra Leone.
Yeah, well, the season 3 thing is that Phil Morris did say that they'd been returned to the BBC in 1974. So they may have been returned and sent somewhere else, as happened with so many of these prints. So, they weren't in Sierra Leone, but they turned up somewhere else. I just said Ghana because everybody seems to think Ghana's the place, but it could be anywhere, really. It could be Ethiopia.
It's interesting that Morris is sort of out on a limb with that one because, everyone else seemed to think that they were still in Sierra Leone and got destroyed, and they went back to London in 1974 was out of the blue.
A bit like his thing about the Prince of Enemy and Webb coming via Gibraltar and Zambia. That came out of the blue as well.
Yeah, the thing about Sierra Leone is that there was only one man on the ground, as far as I know. There was only Phil Morris there, and I am presuming, and it's probably too big an assumption to be fair, but I'm assuming that anything that he fed back about Sierra Leone almost entirely informs Paul Vanezis' position on it.
Yes.
So it comes as a bit of a surprise when Paul initially is saying that they were all destroyed, because I assumed, and perhaps this is wrong, that was got from Phil Morris. And then later on, Phil himself relays the story about the film store getting blown up because the rebel leader felt worried there might be some footage of him there.
Yep.
But he himself has said that the films were returned in 1974. Well, maybe both can be true. Maybe Phil thought initially that the films were there, told Paul, and Paul then told everyone they were destroyed, and then maybe he uncovered a bit of paperwork later on, the traffic log or whatever, the film traffic log, that said that the films were sent back. I don't know.
And maybe it was Monster of Peladon that got blown up, which really isn't such a bad thing, really.
Well, yeah, there were tapes there.
Yeah.
Anyway, jolly good. So I'm going to start the music again.
Okay.
So let's pass it around.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still looking. So I think this was one for me to open then. Okay. So this one is, I have no knowledge of the circumstances in which he found the films or the timing beyond what he said. So I think that's another Vanezis one.
That sounds perfectly innocent to me.
Yeah, and
sounds fine.
From memory, this is relating to the finding of the films in Joss and Phil Morris's insistence that this was in late 2011. Which is what I'm going to call the Joss dating controversy in memory of the famous unit dating controversy from the 1980s. I guess the issue with this is that the dates just don't work. First off, we've got, we know for sure Paul Vanezis was talking to Caro Skinner and others in the autumn of 2011, and he said this on Gallifrey Brace out in the open. And he says that he knew at that stage that Webb was back. Well, if he knew at that stage that Webb was back, then that must have been coming back for a while. It can't have been found at the same time. I guess more than that, I guess we're treading on to your territory now, Tim. Is the story of Richard Baker from February 2011 and the place where he worked and the package that was definitely picked up by Phil Morris. Do you want to tell the tale?
Well, I don't know if I know the story better than you, but Richard Baker, who worked for the International Logistics Company, which will remain unnamed, he said that he was handling a package. Was it a package or a box?
It's a box, wasn't it? Or package box type thing.
Okay, well, he was handling a box that Phil Morris came to collect, and when Phil Morris turned up to collect it, he purportedly said that it had Doctor Who in there and that we won't hear about it until the end of that year. I mean, the interesting thing about it for me is everyone who I have asked about it have said pretty unambiguously that some of Enemy and Webb were in there. So that is why I personally believe that the dating is given by Morris is unreliable or mistaken. But yeah, that's the story, Richard.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the question we have to ask is, why does he use those dates? So I mean, as you suggested, it could just be a mistake. I suppose the other possibility is that he wasn't in Nigeria in 2010, but he was in Nigeria in 2011, and so he's trying to retime it in order to fit in better with the narrative of him actually bursting into the room and looking at the dusty shelves with his own eyes.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that. We'll talk more about the recovery probably later on when we get to Enemy and Web the Enemy of the World Special Edition.
Sure.
But yeah, and then the quote itself that you have: "I have no knowledge of the circumstances in which he found the films or the timing beyond what he said." How is that a typical Vanezis deceit?
Well, but with Vanezis though, it's always a matter of he says something that's almost true or that's ostensibly true. But can be twisted a different way. So he doesn't tell an outright lie.
No. So yeah, no knowledge of the circumstances in which he found the films or the timing beyond what he has said. But that doesn't mean that's what he said publicly.
Yeah.
I just think that's a very typical comment from Paul, and that just leaps out to me. And I think we were all on it like tramps on chips. Anyway, let's start the music again.
Yeah, there's still a few layers left on this. So, Mike, over to you.
Okay. There's still nothing in it. Here you go, Tim.
Oh, thanks. Okay, let's take another layer off here. Oh, well, I've got my little bit of paper says two things. It's a question, and it says, maybe Paul will find some season 5 cans propping up a shelf in a forgotten warehouse somewhere in Nigeria. And then Paul's replied, unfortunately I haven't. And this is from October 2011, and I think this is the first classic Vanezis moment, I think, in that I mean, you couldn't have scripted that setup for him, and that someone on the forum is daydreaming about the Africa search and has written, maybe Paul will find some season 5 film cans propping up a shelf. And classic Paul is, he just replies, unfortunately I haven't. And the missing but there is, but I know a man who has. I mean, he almost certainly, no, he definitely knew about the films. It's October 2011. And so... But
he's right again. He personally hasn't found them.
That's absolutely, he's 100% correct, yeah. But there is a missing... But I think this is a lot of fun, this one. I think this is a classic, funny moment. And it's an Easter egg planted by Paul. I mean, there's no point in who's he doing this for if not his own enjoyment. Surely he would expect people to look back at that and enjoy it. But this went completely under the radar at the time. He had a beautiful setup, and I think it just demonstrates that he will set out to, as he calls it, wrong foot people for the funsies. That's what he's up to.
Anyway, well, there's only so much fun we can